Hello everyone! Welcome to another episode of the Pony Podcast. This week we are interviewing Claire
Williams
from BETA,
Yeah.
So that's the British Equestrian Trade Association.
Not just anyone from BETA, the executive director of BETA.
Because I don't know whether anyone's noticed this, but we are kind of a big deal. So we talked to Claire a little bit about something that you guys wanted us to cover in an episode, which is prohibited substances. So stuff that you'll be tested for if you compete affiliated. So British eventing, British dressage, British show jumping, British endurance, and if you compete FEI, and they're starting to bring it in for pony club and riding club as well. So it's definitely stuff you need to be aware of if you're actively competing at all.
She gives you some top tips to look out for, like some ideas of how you can avoid getting your feed contaminated, and where you can look at with feeds and supplements that you buy to check for prohibited substances.
Yeah, and it's not all doom and gloom. Like, don't panic and be like, oh my god, everything that I feed my horse is going to contaminate him. Like, we go through the guidelines, what is okay, what isn't okay, and if you know that your horse is getting something that probably could be a prohibited substance, what avenues you need to go down to either declare it to whatever organisation you're competing with, or make sure that you're within the specified okay range.
We've also teamed up with BETA to offer you a competition.
Yeah, because we know how everyone loves a competition.
Yeah, competition time. So they've given us a little bundle of BETA branded goodies.
Yeah, which you'll see on our Instagram tonight.
So it will go live. It's live now as this episode goes out.
Yeah.
And it'll be up for a week.
Yeah. For a week.
Yeah. So you need to like our page or our Instagram, and like BETA's Instagram, their page, and just tag a friend. You know, it's the every tag is an entry kind of thing.
Yeah. So the more people you tag in separate comments, the more entries you'll get in. But bear in mind, I will be noticing if you just tag the same people 40 times, which has happened before. And last time I counted your entries, but guys, like, I have a life. And I can't just sit there logging every single entry when some of you enter. And we love the enthusiasm so much. Like, it's so great. But someone did enter 150 times just themselves last time, and most of them were the same people that they were tagging, and I can't do it anymore. I can't.
So rant over. Please still enter our competition. So we put off by Tessa's grumpiness.
I'm not grumpy, but like, guys, I've got to get to sleep at some point. Like, someone was doing it at 3 a.m. last time, and I was going insane. But yeah, thanks so much for the enthusiasm, but please do tag different people.
And on that note, if you like this episode, make sure you rate us on Facebook, on Apple Podcasts,
Apple Podcasts and Spotify,
and like our page on Facebook. That's the one.
And doing that does mean that other people can find us as well, and recommend us to your friends, because that helps as well. Everything to help us get more listeners would be really nice. Thanks, guys.
And if you enjoyed this episode with an expert, make sure you look back at some of our other episodes that are on Apple Podcasts, because we've done one with Kelly Jones, the bridal maker, and we've also had on a vet talking about flu. My brain is completely blank of what other episodes we've done. So there's lots of expert episodes on there. I promise they're there. I promise. Experts. They're really great. Let us know what you think through all the usual channels, so DMing us on Facebook and Instagram, and emailing theponypod@gmail.com with what you liked about this episode. And if there's anything you want to hear, don't hesitate to ask us specifically for episodes, because we do them, as this episode is proof of. Anyway, we hope you like it. Happy listening.
We're not the only ones interviewing here.
Oh,
how exciting!
We've had a very exciting morning. I've plucked up the courage to go and ask Echo Ratings if we could be on the Alphabetic Spaghetti episode. And they said yes, and he gave me his phone number. You were walking up and I was like, wow. Okay, yeah, good, Alex.
Did you see clear boarding this morning come in? We're in the funkiest of boots.
Oh, no, I keep seeing her.
We haven't plugged up the podcast.
She's lovely, you should.
I know.
She's really nice.
I bet she's really busy.
She's an aunt in our pony club area, so we even have a connection, but every time we're like, no, we don't
president is Jane Holderness-Rodden, who I'm awe-inspired. She's amazing.
I've got to leave at lunchtime to go pick up a stallion for the stallion parade and come back. And the stud he collects at is West
Western
Kington.
stuff there, that's
So I've met her a
Jane's.
couple of times and I've been like,
She is Claire Balding's godmother.
Really?
oh, it's so
I
weird.
didn't know that. See,
Such a small world.
She's Michael Bullen's sister.
Yeah.
And everything.
Yeah.
I babysat Michael Bullen's grandchildren, so I know the Bullens quite well. I spent the summers looking after them. So that's my
Small world.
And every
Very
time I walk past Sarah Bullen, I'm like, you don't actually know me, but you know my mum really well. Hello.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah. Hello everyone, we're recording live from Badminton Media Centre, which is why you can hear important things happening in the background. We're here from Claire. We're here with Claire from BETA, which is the British Equestrian Trade Association.
That's right.
And she's going to talk to us all about banned substances and drug testing.
And what you need to be careful about.
And it's really exciting because this is one of the episodes that you guys suggested and that you wanted to hear about. So hopefully you'll have all your questions answered. And if not, we'll tell you how to find out more.
We are giving the people what they want.
No pressure.
Hello Claire, welcome to the Pony Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for agreeing to be on the podcast, first of all. Even if it was a little bit, we're here together, let's do this.
It's constantly a surprise to us when people agree to be on the podcast.
Nothing like spontaneity.
No.
So we'll start off easily. What is a prohibited substance?
Well, it can be defined in many ways, and in a way it depends where you're competing and what you're doing. Under racing rules, a prohibited substance is anything that will have an effect on the physiology of a horse, which strictly speaking means food and water. Everything
Yeah.
would be banned. The FEI try to make it a bit more easier. Most of your audience will be FEI compendium, so Olympic disciplines. And they have divided their prohibited substances up into two categories. So you have banned substances, which are never allowed, and then you have controlled medications that are allowed outside of competition, but absolutely no trace may be found in competition, which in a way almost makes it harder. It's easy to think everything's banned, then some things are sometimes and other things aren't. So and that's why it's so important if you are competing and you think you might be tested. And it's not just in events like badminton where they may test you. I've known pony club to test at champs, riding clubs to test, at even really low level competition. So it's just not worth taking the risk.
Does that include like riders' medication?
No, riders, well, I'm just talking about horses.
Okay.
So this is horses, but there are similar lists for riders. Yeah. And actually, you can usually assume that what's banned for riders, definitely banned for horses. So, although not necessarily the other way around. So no giving your horse your favourite chocolate.
If a controlled substance is not allowed to be present at competition, why is the distinction between the two? Because surely the FAI aren't, or would the FAI go to someone's yard and test between competitions?
Sometimes they will, to do reporting levels. So racing do that a lot, for example. So racing do a lot more testing than we do in our competitions. Every horse, at least 2 horses per race are tested in every race.
Wow.
Yeah, so they do huge levels of testing.
Wow, their lab workers must get a lot.
Yeah, they spend a lot of money with them. And they do on-yard testing, and they're a lot stricter, so they make trainers keep medication lists. And I would always say to anyone competing, whatever, keep a list of your medicines at home, and also make certain you track what you're feeding. And by feeding, we mean anything that the horse ingests. So feed, what we call supplements, but actually, boringly in feed law, there's no such thing as a supplement. It's complementary feeding stuff. So it's all covered under the same law. So whatever your horse eats, you need to be aware, whether that's top dressed, whether that's an apple, whether that's
hay and haylage and stuff.
Everything. So the controlled medications are there because they have a therapeutic function for the horse. So the best known controlled medication is bute. So bute's fine to be used outside of competition, but you have to watch out what they call the withdrawal period. So a lot of feed may also have what can be perceived as controlled medications in. So one of the ones is something like a harpagicide, and harpagicide is quite often the most commonly known ones are things like devil's claw
Oh yeah.
or meadow sweet, which you'll
My neighbour feeds that and started competing FEI and walked into the track room and was like, get that out.
And so they go into a lot of feed for a reason, because they have, for feed manufacturers, they're not allowed to make certain claims like medicinal claims. So that's why you'll see lots of claims like supports joint health. And that's why a lot of these herbs have a natural ability to help the horse, but it is such that if it was used in competition, it would be seen as an unfair advantage. So that's why on a lot of feeds you'll also see a withdrawal period.
Oh, wow.
So that's the division. Now,
something to look out for.
Yeah, and a lot of these substances also have what we call thresholds. So as long as they're found under that threshold, then they're fine. But if they tip over the threshold, that's when they tread into difficult territory.
So we've talked about the most well-known prohibited substances. What do you think the least known substances are that we need to be careful of?
I think a lot of people don't realise what are in common and everyday things that they might give their horse thinking they're not doing any harm. And that's where we look at what we call the NOPs, which are the naturally occurring prohibited substances. They're the ones that will probably most people will come across most often. And they're the ones like coffee and tea contain something called theobromine and theophylline. And they are a naturally occurring prohibited substance, and they shouldn't be found in horses. You have, and they're in an awful lot, so no Coca-Cola, no Red Bull,
Oh my God.
anything like that will contain those. Anything like a stimulant, and then you've got, don't forget, a lot of bakery products have chocolate in. Chocolate's another one. So no chocolate. So a friend of mine used to ride a horse whose owner would give the horses a treat of chocolate biscuit after every dressage test. And she didn't know. So don't do that. And the biggest one that set up the whole NOP scheme was poppies. But not your common and everyday red poppy in the field. That's the British field poppy. So that isn't so much of an issue. It's something called Papaver somniferum, which is the poppy they use for the opium drug, which used to be grown in this country. It is still grown in gardens across the nation, so you can buy the seeds and grow them legitimately in your garden. They contain morphine. And also you do have to be careful. If you like poppy seed cake or poppy seed buns, the seeds on top will contain potentially opium.
That's another one of my favorite. If you have a poppy seed bagel and you get drug tested at work, you can be tested positive for morphine.
It's true.
I know.
It's not an urban myth. It's true.
I mean, it's not good, but it's so cool.
So you do. And another one that a lot of people I use on demos is sweet chili crisps.
Really?
I love sweet chili crisps.
Yeah, they
God, it's no fun working on a yard.
Capsicum was
from
hot
chili
pepper.
peppers.
Chili pepper. It came into prominence quite a few years ago when a horse tested positive because they'd been topically applying it to its legs to make it sensitive, to make it lift.
I knew that it used to happen in driving horses to make them carry their tails. They'd scratch under the tail and then put that there so they hold it up.
That's horrible.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's ghastly.
Yeah.
So that's my new favourite, sweet chili crisps.
I mean, it's no fun working on a yard, is it, where everything's controlled? You can't have coffee, you can't have tea, you can't have chocolate, you can't have crisps.
But it does help promote a healthy lifestyle if you know you can't eat them because banned substances.
Yeah,
but
it's not worth it.
But also, don't forget how many of our yards have their kettle in the feed room.
Or in the tack room. I always, if it's in the tack room, where you're touching the coffee and tea and then you're going straight to touch the tack and the tack's going straight on your horse.
Yeah, so you do have to just think. Or if you've taken an aspirin. So another one that people don't know about is willow bark.
Really?
Willow bark is the source of salicylic acid, and salicylic acid is what is an aspirin.
Yeah, it used to be
so it's a painkiller.
It was a herbal remedy for toothache. You'd chew willow bark.
Yeah. So that's another bend.
Yeah. We were always warned about if you have owners coming onto the yard, tell them they have to wash their hands immediately, or say they can't touch the horses, because if you have a hand cream that's got hydrocortisone or something in it, and then you touch the horses, they'll test positive for it.
If you're unlucky.
If you're unlucky. But that was always, I mean, I worked on some quite strict yards, and that was always one. And I'm quite severely asthmatic, so if I have to take my own Ventolin, I have to like run away, well, crawl away because I'm having an asthma attack, but get away from the yard. Don't touch any horses afterwards.
So we've spoken about what the substances are. How do the horses get tested for them?
Normally, they are selected and tested for urine. In our disciplines, they tend to be mainly urine test. They only go to blood, so they take a blood sample off the horse when they can't get a urine off them, and they have to test. And then they will go off to the lab. The labs have got better and better, and the equipment they use has got more and more sensitive. So if there is anything in there, they will find it.
So we went to, when I just started work, we went down to the south of France for an event, and one of the horses that we were with got pulled in for a drug test, and I thought it was really interesting to see how they did it, because they had a cup on a stick that
It's
she
very
didn't
high tech,
and it was all bagged up and bottled and really clinical.
Aseptic
gloves.
technique and all
And
of
she took a blood and a urine sample, and I was surprised how much blood they take.
It's because they have to keep 2 samples.
Yeah.
So they have to separate them out, because don't forget there's always an A and a B.
Yeah.
So that if you do get a positive, you can challenge it.
Yeah.
They can retest it.
Yeah.
But they do have to be really careful and really sensitive because of anything they might bring.
Touch,
anything they touch.
Yeah.
It's the same when they do after your dressage test, that they check for blood in the mouth of the gloves, so they have to have the gloves on. That must be a similar
And new
thing.
gloves every time.
Yeah.
Very environmentally conscious. All that plastic.
True.
So how much substances a horse have to be failed, or is that one of the questions we were taking?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
That will depend on the substance.
Okay.
So it depends what substance is, whether there's a threshold. So we have what they call reporting levels. So up into that level, so they set a level. They are now published. Some of them are published, some of them aren't. For some of them, they don't have a level. So if it's banned, there's no level. If they find it, they're out.
Yeah.
With controlled medication, again, if they find it, you're out, unless there's a threshold. We've just been writing to the FEI because the racing has more thresholds than the FEI does. So there are some substances that they have a threshold for in racing that they don't. So there's copper is one of the issues we've got right now, where in Australia they started overdosing with copper sulfate.
What does that do? I feel like I've heard about it, but
it is. It's been brought in. It helps the horse sustain pain, I think. I'm not absolutely certain, but I know there is now a level.
For arthritis, you can get copper bracelets, can't you?
Yeah, but there are some things like copper's an essential element, so all horses need copper.
Yeah.
So that's where they set a level which will pick up abuse. So that's where a lot of the levels are aimed at. So they're allowed to have a certain level because they need it, and then above that level it's viewed as an abuse level.
Wow.
And so you need to be aware of what those levels are, although really it's just better if you try and avoid it totally and don't try, because you will never know as well. Trying to get an idea of if you feed a horse with something contaminated, what that means in terms of what comes out the other end is really difficult to gauge, because it's like you and me.
Different for everyone.
It is. So I might take 1 ibuprofen, you'll need to take 2. So it's exactly the same. The horse's metabolism varies hugely. So some horses are really, really good at metabolising, and they'll show everything, and other horses aren't. So
if you do have a drug test and fail, what are the repercussions of it?
Again, it depends on what you've got, what's been found. So if it's a banned substance, you could look at a lengthy ban for competition. If it's what we call a specified substance, so within FEI rules you have your banned, you have your controlled medications, and then you have another category called specified substances. And the specified substances tend to be the NOPs, so they're the ones that have a linkage with what might be found in your feed. And if it's a specified substance, the penalties are lower, because it's acknowledged that if it's in your feed, it was accidental, you didn't mean to do it, but
it's still there.
It's still there, so you may have had an unfair advantage, so you're not working off a level playing field. So in that case, you'll still lose, but you may not suffer the same ban that you would have if it had been a banned or a controlled medication.
Do they take into account in that situation what your final result was?
No.
So So it wouldn't make any difference if you'd had a supposed advantage but you'd been eliminated.
No.
Versus had it and won.
No, it's the same penalty.
Okay.
It's the same in. We had there was a couple of instances in racing where they did a test, and it was often it's the intention. So if you give something to a horse with the intention of having an unfair advantage, you're still guilty. So they did a test on a trainer who'd given his horse something thinking he was going to get an advantage. When they tested the substance and the horse, there was absolutely nothing in it at all. You may as well have given him water, but he was still found guilty and fined.
It's like my favourite fact is that horses blood dope themselves. So, human athletes, you take a pint of blood out, you give the athlete 2 weeks to replenish it themselves, and then you put the blood back in, and they've got more haemoglobin to carry oxygen. And there were dodgy racehorse trainers who decided to do this with racehorses, but it didn't make any difference because horses do it themselves, which is my favourite fact in the whole world.
That's a new one on me.
It's so cool. Their spleen holds loads of blood, and as soon as they're in a stressful situation, it shunts it all into their circulatory system.
You gave me a fact before about what an anagram is, and my favourite is that it's the same for morphine, for opium poppies. The level that would tip you over is a teaspoon in an Olympic swimming pool.
Yeah.
It's tiny.
Yeah,
and the other thing to remember is a lot of these, like the prohibited substances, like opiums, like poppy seeds, if they're in a bag of feed, it's what we call pocketed. So it is literally like finding a needle in a haystack. So you can test a bag of feed, you can take a sample out and test it and find nothing. You can take another sample from the same bag of feed and potentially find it. That's why it's so difficult.
If you do test positive, what are your options for either appealing it, or what are your options for trying to lessen your ban to say it was an accident, I didn't mean?
You test your B sample first, and then you'd go back, and probably the most famous recent case is Jock Padgett. And there was Chris Yeoman before him, and that was, what was it, Yahimbe? That was Referpine was in that one, and that was a supplement, not a NOPS member, I have to say. And he went to court. So basically, he went to appeal with the FEI, and he went back through an awful lot of records, and he managed to find the batch of the feed that he'd fed and tested it, found similar batches, went back to the manufacturer, who then tested his batches, and they found the guilty substance in the batch of feed that he fed. And that's why it can be really crucial. Not many riders do. They keep samples of the feed they've fed.
We do it.
So
when we have everyone knows this, I work for Nick Gauntlet, and he's sponsored by Bailey's, and whenever we get a batch of new feed in, we save aside a bag of each type of feed, and then we have a book that we write down the date of the order, we write down the batch, the sell by date, and which feed it is. And then we have some sealed bags that we take a couple of handfuls out, put it in the bag, write on the bag all the details, and we keep them for 3 orders.
And you want to take the samples from different places in the bag.
Absolutely. So you've got a distributed sample. I mean, that's so good, and so few people do that. Just even things like, even if you don't keep the sample, which is really good, just writing the date you took the order and the batch number, the sell by date, that then is a huge help to the feed manufacturer, because they can then track it back, because they keep
all the
samples of everything they send out, and that's key. So that's how Jock got it, is that he was able to absolutely prove, and he was also lucky he had other people who'd fed from the same batch of feed
who had the same thing,
who had not tested positive.
Oh, wow.
So that helped his case, because he could show, it wasn't my fault, and that's how he got his ban reduced.
I did a season for Sam Griffiths. I think the year after Jock was tested positive, and we had a talk from someone from NAF, I think, Jock's lawyer, and someone else feed-related.
It would have been possibly from the lab that helped him, that did a lot of the testing.
It was, fascinating. It was amazing, and that's why, I know I'm not allowed my Ventolin on the yard. I know I'm not allowed, that's why I'm quite aware of it. But listening to it was fascinating, and his lawyer was amazing. terrifying, but
He's
amazing.
great. He talks at our conferences. He's wonderful.
Amazing.
He's wonderful.
If anything ever happens to me, I want him on my side.
And that's why it's so important, I would say this, that people be aware of what they're feeding, and they feed NOPS approved feed, because the whole NOPS scheme is was designed to reduce the risk, and that's why people don't realise you should never see, if you ever see somebody guaranteeing their feed, don't believe them, because you can't, because the nature of accidental contamination is it's accidental. So feed companies do everything they possibly can. They go right back to the source of all their raw material and they track it, so they know exactly where everything comes from. But that's part of their what we call risk assessment, and that's why NOPS is a risk assessed scheme. So they have to do all these risk assessments. Testing is good, but it won't always find the guilty item. So that's why if you have to reduce the risk, so part of that risk from a rider's perspective is feeding NOPS feeds. From a feed manufacturer's side, they belong to the scheme, they're audited annually, but they have very strict procedures in place at their mills or their factories to make certain that they're always looking out for any potential risks. So they'll have written in place in their factories, nobody can drink coffee on the floor, anybody who is on medication has to report it. So they do in their own factories exactly what you should be doing on your yards.
So we have sort of touched on this, but for a bit more clarification, what is the difference between the banned substances and the NOPS?
The NOPS are a very, very specific list of substances that are either naturally occurring within ingredients that might end up in your feed, like the willow barks and the devil's claw, in which case they have to be flagged up on the packaging. A NOPS can also be in a substance that is in a material that might end up accidentally in a feed material that will occur. So, for example, opium, but poppies of Harvest omniferum, contains a naturally occurring prohibited substance in the form of morphine. Now, that we're never going to put intentionally in the feed, that's always going to end up there accidentally, either through a bakery product or through a poppy for some poppy seeds ending up in the feed accidentally. The other one is sunflower, for example, sunflower meal. Sunflowers are grown in the south of France, and sunflower meal is a common ingredient in horse feed. The problem is in the south of France they can get some weeds growing, and one of those weeds is Jimson weed, and that contains atropine. So when they harvest the sunflowers, if they accidentally harvest one of those flowers in it, that could then end up in the process and end up in your feed.
And presumably it's all mushed together, so if it's in there, it's in
everything.
it.
Whereas with poppies, that's what we say, so that's the difference between homogenous, where it's through everything, and pocketed, when there might be a flower head in a bit of a bag. So that's the difference. So NOPS are always in there accidentally. It's a defined list that you can either see on our website or you can see it's published list, and we have the main list, which includes theobromine, theophylline, morphine, atropine, hyoscine, and some unusual ones like bufotenine, which comes from toads. Not that you'd find one of those in your feed. And there's another one that occurs in something called canary reed grass, which is grown in France. And then we've got the herbal NOPS, which are some of those common herbs and their off-throws, which sometimes end up accidentally. So it's all about accidental contamination.
So we were told if a supplement or complementary feed has on it FEI approved, FEI fine, you shouldn't trust if they've just written it, but you can trust the beta NOPS.
The beta NOPS scheme is because we're not guaranteeing it. If you say FEI approved, it's an inferred guarantee, and all of our members are not allowed to offer a guarantee, direct or inferred. And there's no such thing as FEI approved, because the FEI do not approve feed. So, or you'll sometimes see Jockey Club approved, which doesn't exist. So you do have to be cautious.
So what can you do to prevent positive drug tests?
Buy an NOPS feed, but that's not going to guarantee, but it's going to help reduce the risk. And take your own precautions in the yard. And we do a wall chart that you can download off our website, or we could give you a link if you want to post a link to
that would
it.
be great.
And that looks at 3 areas where you can reduce the risk. So you can do it in your stable, in terms of the way you manage your stable. So that's things like if you've got horses in that are on medication, keep them in their own box and disinfect, or keep a medication box separate. Just be aware if you've got a horse on medication about the tack, so you make certain you clean the tack. Your feed management, so if you've got one horse on bute, don't share feed bowls, keep separate stirrers, or don't do what we do. We have a big bucket of sugar beet that we top up with water, then we swill the feed bowls out and put it back in. So don't do that if one's on bute. And then medication management. If you're on medicine, be aware.
Take yourself away.
Take yourself aware. And so we can share that with you, but you have to take responsibility as riders or grooms as much as we have to take responsibility as the people feeding you.
Well, that's been so helpful. Thank you so much for
Very
talking to
welcome.
us.
Lovely to see you both.
And if people want to find out more, what's your website?
Is www.beta-uk.org.
And you're on Instagram and Facebook as
Yeah,
well?
we're as Beta Equestrian and on Facebook as well. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of badminton.
You too as well.
Thank you.